The government has arrested 2 judges in 2 states, but only one of them is getting national attention. Both of these judges were arrested on false accusations. Federal authorities are baselessly claiming that these judges prevented ICE from arresting immigrants who are here allegedly unlawfully and or are harboring Venezuelan gang members. This morning, the FBI busted into Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan's courtroom like the Kool-Aid Man and charged her with 2 felonies. Those 2 criminal charges include obstructing a proceeding and concealing an individual to prevent arrest. In a court filing, the Justice Department claims that Judge Dugan refused to turn someone over after immigration agents showed up to arrest him in her courtroom on April 18th, and that she tried to help him evade arrest by allowing him to exit through a jury door. The Justice Department also described the judge as visibly angry and commented that the situation was absurd when she discovered that immigration officials were there to arrest Eduardo Flores Ruiz. Which, yeah, no shit, Sherlock! Also in that court filing, the Justice Department claims that Judge Dugan ordered ICE to go and speak with the chief judge and then escorted Flores Ruiz and his attorney through a door. Now, the Justice Department claims that she led them to a non-public area of the courthouse, but sources told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that Judge Dugan guided them to a public area. Also in an email from Chief Judge Carl Ashley, ICE was asked whether they had a warrant, and the agents presented the warrant as well as their identification, to which the chief judge wrote that ICE agents were told to wait until the court hearing had concluded, but they didn't do that. And because Eduardo Flores Ruiz was reasonably scared and ran away from federal authorities, they criminally charged him for doing so. It's important to note that Judge Dugan presides over misdemeanor cases, and Flores Ruiz was before her court on April 18th for a misdemeanor case. Just to make it clear, just because Flores Ruiz is facing 3 misdemeanor battery counts does not mean that he should be expelled from the country. Prior to April 18th, he did not have any state or federal criminal offenses or charges against him. As of today, Eduardo Flores Ruiz has not been convicted of any crime. We don't know what his story is. It's simply that the government has decided that any immigrants from south of the United States are not welcome here. And because Judge Dugan stood in the government's way, she had to stand before Magistrate Judge Stephen C. Dries, a judge who also happens to be a member of the Milwaukee chapter of the Federalist Society. In that hearing, Judge Dugan's attorney, Craig Mastantuano, told the court, quote, Judge Dugan wholeheartedly regrets and protests her arrest. It was not made in the interest of public safety. Now, what's not getting nearly enough national attention is that another judge in New Mexico, who was forced to resign last month for harboring Venezuelan gang members, was arrested on Thursday alongside his wife for harboring Venezuelan gang members. For those of you who aren't watching, I was using air quotes. On February 28th, the FBI raided the home of former Doña Ana County Magistrate Judge Joel Cano and detained 3 Venezuelan nationals at his home. He was then forced to resign because he was under investigation for allegedly tampering with evidence. Even though no criminal charges have been filed against them, the Canos are being held without bond in a county detention center. Now, authorities aren't just holding a forced-to-resign judge in custody without bail. Cano is also a former police officer with the Las Cruces Police Department who served for nearly 23 years. I don't hear anything from the Back the Blue people. Cano described the allegations against the 3 men who were living in his casita as, quote, highly sensationalized and without merit. And it turns out that the reason the Canos are in this mess is because there's a snake in the grass in New Mexico. One of their neighbors snitched to ICE that undocumented migrants associated with the Venezuelan gang were living with them. Cano told local broadcast station KOAT that each of the men had immigration paperwork. Quote, their paper stated in the upper right-hand corner, this person is not subject to removal. They each had a specific court date regarding their asylum hearings. One of the young men detained, thanks to that snake of a neighbor, was a handyman. That young man, Christian Ortega Lopez, installed a glass door for Nancy Cano in late 2023. He continued to work for them in 2024. And after he was evicted in April of 2024, Nancy Cano offered him to stay in their casita, something that upstanding citizens do. As far as I'm concerned, the Canoes are goddamn angels. Cano wrote that his wife facilitated these men's appearances for immigration court and appointments with their legal counsel. Also, Cano said that the three men had become, quote, a meaningful part of our extended family, involved in community events and working on obtaining work authorization while their cases were pending. In his resignation letter, Joel Cano stated, quote, let me be as crystal clear as possible. The very first time I ever heard that the boys could possibly have any association with this Venezuelan gang was when I was informed of that by the agents on the day of the raid. But because federal authorities are acting in bad faith, they scoured social media for proof that these men were in fact gang members. Their proof is that they have tattoos, clothing, apparel, and displayed hand gestures. Federal authorities also say, hey, look, we also have proof that they have access to the very product that the Republican Party has made easier for people to have access to. But it turns out those photos are just of them having fun on a range with the Canoes. None of these three men actually owned any of those products. What federal authorities took during the raid belonged to the Cano's daughter, April. Cano stated that the products used at the range were not owned by the Canoes. Regardless, these photos are not proof of gang activity. It's just people with hobbies. And since federal authorities are ruining Joel Cano's life, as well as the lives of the three immigrants who have committed no crime, this story deserves national attention. It's also important to note that Ortega Lopez entered the United States near Eagle Pass and was detained by CBP, but was released on humanitarian parole ahead of deportation proceedings. He eventually moved to El Paso, where he met Nancy Cano and began working for her as a handyman. In April of 2024, Nancy Cano helped Ortega Lopez file a request for immigration relief. In other words, he was doing everything by the book. In light of all of this, the government is sending a stark message to the judiciary, and that's to stand down or we'll ruin you. Attorney General Pam Bondi stated on Fox News this morning, quote, what has happened to our judiciary is beyond me. The judges are deranged is all I can think of. I think some of these judges think that they are beyond and above the law. They are not, and we are sending a very strong message today. If you are harboring a fugitive, we will come after you and we will prosecute you. We will find you. I'm sorry, Pam, but what you stated on a broadcast network is what's actually deranged. She was pressed on this by Fox News anchor John Roberts, who stated that critics might interpret such prosecutions as expanding the powers of Article 1 of the Constitution. Bondi didn't answer the question. She just stated nobody is above the law. It appears that the government is coalescing around that singular message. What they are actually saying is laws for thee, but not for me. Another thing that's deranged is that Republicans are cheering Judge Dugan's arrest. Wisconsin Congressman Derek Van Orden told Axios, quote, it is abundantly clear that many activist judges around the country have been acting politically. He added, quote, judges are not supposed to write the law, and they certainly are not above it. The thing this gaslighting beardo misses is that executive orders are not law. It's important to mention that Derek Van Orden represents Wisconsin's 3rd District, which sits between Minneapolis and Madison. Meanwhile, Texas Congressman Troy Nehls showed us he's not original, and Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett stated, quote, if she broke the law, she needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent. No double standards. This dweeb is Tim Burchett. He represents Tennessee's 2nd District, which encompasses Knoxville. Troy Nehls represents Texas's 22nd District, which includes the suburbs of Houston and the area in the Southwest. Then there's Wisconsin Congressman Tom Tiffany, who plans to run for Wisconsin governor next year. He posted, if you help illegal aliens evade arrest, you'll be arrested. This is Tom Tiffany. He represents Wisconsin's 7th District, which includes parts of Minneapolis and northeast of it. Freshman Congressman Tony Weed, who filled Mike Gallagher's vacant seat, stated that Judge Dugan should resign immediately. He is well practiced in the government's talking points, calling judges like Judge Dugan activist judges, and also claiming that they are actively breaking the law to protect illegal aliens. This is Tony Weed. He kind of looks like the human Grinch. Unfortunately, the people of Wisconsin's 8th District put the Grinch in office. Now, Wisconsin's Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin stated, quote, in the United States, we have a system of checks and balances and separations of power for damn good reasons. While details of this exact case remain minimal, this action fits into the deeply concerning pattern of this president's lawless behavior and undermining courts and Congress's check on his power. Democratic Rep. Gwen Moore, who represents Milwaukee, said that Judge Dugan's arrest had, quote, all the hallmarks of overreach. She added, quote, federal law enforcement coming into a community and arresting a judge is a serious matter and would require high legal bar. She also called out the government's lawlessness, including defying court orders and acting with disregard for the Constitution. My only question is, when will New Mexico lawmakers begin speaking for Joel and Nancy Cano? Because they deserve the same level of support as Judge Dugan.